Okay, very warm welcome everyone to Victoria Memorial Hall. We are very happy that you guys have joined us today for the lecture Picturesque Ganga, the Muse of Visiting Artists in India in the 18th and 19th century. We are also going to unveil one of our publication items today, which is also titled Picturesque Ganga. So, before we actually see the publication, let us know more about the paintings and the artists and the scenario in the 18th and 19th century that led to the creation of these works that are so art historically important today. So, we are very happy that Mr. Nanak Ganguly agreed to be the speaker for today. For those of you who may not know him, I'll just briefly introduce him. Nanak Ganguly is an independent critic and curator based in Calcutta. He has written extensively for The Statesman, Asian Age, Deccan Chronicle, and others. He has been the commissioner of Pan Asia Pacific Biennale, appointed by LKA in 1997. He has curated shows in India and abroad, notably E-Space, Louis Vuitton in Tokyo, C2I or Situ 1 in Paris, Views of Calcutta, Charles Doyley at Victoria Memorial Hall, Calcutta Sublime Transferences, Imami Art, among others. He has edited and authored several books, including Readings, Somnath Hor, where he edited the book, published by Lalit Kala Academy. Thank you so much, sir, for being here with us today. And I hand over the stage to you without any more delay. Let's hear from you.
So much, Ashwini. Thank you so much for those kind words and for the nice intro. Today we are going to talk about certainly about a period from 1770 to 1850. And I'm really thrilled to be back here at the Victoria Memorial Hall. And I convey my thanks to the secretary and for all the help and support. And basically, we have a saying in our small family of art historians that art historians are like insects. They're either an ant, an industrious as ant, or a bee, sometimes as a eagle, and sometimes as a kind of a peacock. An eagle, especially, or a hawk, when they see a priceless work of art, they kind of snoop into it. And when they see a priceless piece of work, then they really dance in joy. So when this will be unveiled to you, the priceless collection of a minuscule though in a place like this in the White Mausoleum, that uh, I think that's the time for art historians like us to dance in joy. So where it all started? It all started with the coming of the European painters between 1760 and especially after the Battle of Buxar in 1764, when the handsome Mughal emperor Shah Alam II granted the privy uh, to Robert Clive, the East India Company agent, uh, to collect the taxes. That's for the first time in 2000 years, the money started flowing towards the opposite direction. Because from the Roman age, when we had this business with the Roman traders in the time of antiquity, the money used to come to India. And now here, in 1764, after the Battle of Buxar, the money started flowing to England. And especially if you ever visit Powys Castle in Wales, where Robert Clive built a castle, you will see a fascinating hoard of collections, including Tipu's work, including the palanquin that he took from India. And probably he was the richest East India Company officials. And he hoarded a kind of wealth which can be equivalent to Queen Elizabeth uh, or to Queen Victoria during their prime days. And this all started with a small office in London when in 1599 Queen Elizabeth signed a charter so that England can do business with India. And mostly then in the late 18th century, they started flowing this textiles, the Mughal textiles from India to to Britain and to other parts of Europe. And then after gaining, you know, a kind of footing in South Asia, they started planting the opium. So what you see the flourish and the affluence in Europe today is mainly built on the opium trade. And they were sold to China, to places like China. And that's why you will see a connection between George Chinnery, one of the European painters, between India and China. That's where the real trade started. And some you'll see in the writings of Amitabh Ghosh, he has written extensively on this opium trades. His trilogy on opium war and opium trade and how it all started. But behind this thuggery and the colonialism, what we have today, a rich legacy, a rich hoard of pictorial wealth which is incomparable to anywhere else in the world. And most of them are in the collection of Victoria Museum, and some are in the treasures of Great Britain. But there is a nervousness with the English people. They don't want to talk about, and they don't even want to show them, because they think it's connected to the loot, to the plunder during the company period. And now I want to make a categorization of two schools: what we know as the company school and what we know as the European painters in India. European painters are the India, those who came to India, and which continued until the Indian mutiny in 1857, because that's how they gained a kind of a curiosity about India when after the mutiny took place in 1857. That was the exact period when these European painters came, and this school and this paintings that flourished. And also at the same time, some of the Indian painters, those who were trained in the Mughal courts, they were trained and they were tutored by these European practitioners how to handle oil, how to handle an aquarelle, how to use these different mediums, the Western mediums, how to use the perspective, and they created and they gave birth to the so-called company school, a loosely defined term, which was first gained importance to the writing of Mildred Archers when she heard this term company kalam in Patna. And Patna, though, was one of the residents or one of the places along the Ganges which became important during the East India Company, or popularly known as the John Company period. There are other places also. Patna was there, Meerut was there, Kanpur was there, but Calcutta gained the maximum, recognition and the maximum attention from these European painters. It starts with Tilly Kettle. When we see a painting, I'll also show a painting by Tilly Kettle. But Tilly Kettle, what came to our notice as an art historian is this: first, he painted the Fort William from the Ganges. That was the first chromolithograph we have seen of Tilly Kettle. And then the Daniel, the uncle and the cousin and the nephew. Then we see the William Hodges, Chinnery, Thomas Joffany, probably the best European painter to have ever visited South Asia. And we have the Frasers, the famous Fraser album. A lot of these painters, they came to India, and they painted. Along the Ganges and the distributory that we know as Hooghly, it became a very important center. For trade, and they try to get a kind of a supremacy on that route, especially first by the Mughals, then by the Portuguese, then by the Dutch and the English, we know. And all these places, all these settlements along the Ganges, the Chandanagar, the Dani settlement in Srirampur, in Patna, Calcutta, of course, after the so-called, the landing of Job Chanok on a rainy afternoon in August in 1690, that we know that it developed as the headquarters of the East India training, of the East India Company, or we popularly know as the John Company. But we see a kind of what Victoria Memorial is doing today is unveiling a set of priceless paintings in their collection. And they're doing it, they're kind of propagating the value and the wealth that they have today, what we know as the European painters in India. But the problem is, what we had in our art history, even that is taught in the art colleges and schools, you will see the Western art historians, and especially the British art historians, they will never define an European painting or the medieval European painting as a Florentine school, or say as a kind of a Siena school. They will call them as great painters like Duccio, like Giotto, like Raphael, like Michelangelo. But here we see the historians, they will, they will coin the term and the paraphrases and the nomenclatures as Pahari school, Mughal miniatures. So they are as great painters as Raphael or Michelangelo. But there is a politics of the modern that we know, that when the Europe came here, they felt that they came with a baggage which is superior Indian, which is a superior culture, that they belong to a better civilization. So even today, that the place that we live in India, and even in a and post-colonial city like India, the equivalence of good education is the connotation of proper accent, how good you speak English, because English they felt is a higher language, and all these languages, Marathi, Bengali, these are vernaculars. So that was there. So we'll never find they will glorify the paintings or the painters in India as they have glorified the European painters. Say like, because Raphael himself is a school, Michelangelo himself is a school, Duccio himself was a school, and even Giotto. They will never call Giotto to be a Sienese painter, merely a Sienese painter, or Giotto as a kind of a Florentine painter. Like this, with the effort and the help of Victoria, we think it will be helpful to propagate these European painters, those who came here, those who by all deem and merit, they are fascinating and great painters by themselves. And even with those unforgotten masters of the company school as well. As I just said, the difference between European painters in India and the company school. The problem with when we study European school or the company school is that if I ask you, this is a very kind of this have been explained by the so-called notion of Orientalism. When Napoleon first, went to, when Napoleon or these European powers first went to Asia, say for example Egypt, he never came with an army. You remember India. You remember the so-called successive attacks to India, starting from Alexander to Nadir Shah to Ahmad Shah Abdali in 1761, when the third battle of Panipat took place. They came with an army. But the fun is that when these European powers, whether the Dutch powers or the French powers or the English powers, when they never came with an army. They came with draftsmen, they came with jurists, they came with engineers, they came with architects, and they came and they surveyed us. And then you may ask, the first question that will hit your mind is, then how they gained the supremacy here, how they conquered us. What was the reason? They never had an army like Alexander, that they defeated the emperor here. They, with the help of the Indian soldiers, and which was funded by the Indian bankers, ultimately led to the formation of East India Company army, which at one point of time was bigger than the army of the Great Britain. So much so for the John Company period, so much so for the company school. So they never came. So what they did? So what was that? So they came with jurists, judges, and people trained in the Hillbury school, IS officer, trained officer, and they surveyed us. And when they were surveying us, when Napoleon was surveying Egypt, or when the British were surveying us with the paintings, with the draftsmen, with the engineers, our forefathers, our grandfathers and great grandfathers didn't know that we are being surveyed. And what they gave birth to? A kind of a stereotype. Oh, this is an Asian stereotype. And that gave birth to Orientalism. You must have read all that in Edward Said's tome, that famous book called The Orientalism. So we got stereotype. Oh, this is Indian character. You remember a famous novel, A Passage to India by E.M. Foster? And you remember the character called Dr. Aziz? Dr. Aziz is a fine gentleman. He's a doctor, he's a fine gentleman. He's perfectly a polished character. But we don't know even today what happened in that Marabar caves. We see a European lady coming back running from the Marabar caves and accused Dr. Aziz of sexual harassment. So, an Indian man, stereotyped like this, always weak, always ungentlemanly, vis-a-vis an European person. So that was the story of of Orientalism. That is the besides the main story behind this, the paintings that I will be showing you today. But after all this, machinations and politics and whatever the politics of modern that is, what we are left with is perfectly the greatest legacy of our painting tradition. Probably there could be some mimesis, some cultural mimicry, some cultural mimicry, but in spite of that thuggery of the British, by the colonialism of the British, by the stereotyping of the British, what we are left with is a rich legacy. And what I am very happy about as an art historian, what makes my heart dance with joy, is because now we are getting to see this priceless paintings. And what will be unveiled today will be some 10 priceless paintings in the collection of Victoria Memorial Hall, which is priceless and unique. What really, what I find tragic is we travel all the way to London or maybe to other places in Europe, to Louvre and other places, and after visiting the British Library or the British Museum, we post pictures on the Facebook. Oh, such a lovely painting and how much they've stolen it. But we never care what is lying in the Indian Museum, what is lying in the Victoria Memorial Hall. And it is only possible to come to the public that, like Great Britain, most of them are now in their vault, but the Victoria Memorial Hall people, the officials, they're bringing out to the public the rich treasure that we have in India right now. I give a small example. A friend said that, so much they have stolen from India, even the peacock throne and everything. How do you know it? Well, I went to British Museum, it's all full of Indian artifacts. Then may I ask you, I asked my friend, when you last visited Park Street? Just a month back? And when you last visited the Indian Museum? In my school. So that is the tragic story. When Alexander Cunningham was doing his excavations, 50% of the works came to India. His basic plan, his ploy was to take them to London. But for us, assistant E.M. Bugler, probably Bugler was his name, those treasures are still here. Because today, my friends, it's not possible to go to Taxila Museum, to go to Swat Valley Museum, even to go to Kabul Museum. But to see the treasure from Taxila, from Mardan, from Takhte Bai and all those places, you can go to Indian Museum. But how many people they go there? And today, it's really, I think it's the same, equally the same, that the huge treasure that you're going to see today in the collection of Victoria Memorial of the 18th and the 19th century. What we know as the European painters in India. Because I think even Indian Museum has the finest collection in India. But it's been neglected, and I think I should ask people, scholars like Ashwini ji or Secretary Saab, that you should bring out more portfolios like this. So may I start with some of the European painters that I just mentioned. I would like to show some of the paintings here. Which one should I click? Okay, fine. First that you see is that I mentioned to you about Tilly Kettle, the first European painter whose painting came to the light of the art historians. A view of the Fort William, taken from the Ganges, drawn from the Ganges. This is by him, the same of Shuja-ud-Dawla. It's an all on canvas. And can anyone tell me who was Shuja-ud-Dawla? Outcut. Right, thank you. Then you see Lord Johann Zufani. It's in the collection here. Lord Cornwall is receiving the son of Tipu Sultan. And believe you me, probably Zufani was the greatest and the finest painter of all the European painters, those who ever visited. Some people, they dispute. I was reading one of the opium trilogies, like by Amitabh Ghosh, which one, the first or the second, where he mentions about Chinnery, the smoke of ashes probably. He says that Chinnery was the finest. I really doubt that. Chinnery had connections, and because he was, and like Charles Doyle, he was also into the opium trade. But Chinnery comes second. If you have to rank me, now you say, how do you do this? How you do these rankings? Because these rankings are based on the canons of art. Because when we look at a distance, when we talk about the canons of art, these canons of art are based on scholarship. It's not saying that who is a better painter. Someone who is walking today in 2025, So that is a different ball game altogether. But when you look at a distance of 200 or 250 years, you can really say when the canons are formed, who was a better painter? So on the basis of those canons of the 19th century, one can say that Johannes Zoffany was a far better painter than Chinnery. This is a painting by William Hodges, a view of the southwest side of Chunargarh. And Hodges brought out the first album, which was published in England by the Day Company, like Walter Simpson. So we come across the Hodges album for the first time, which was published in England in a press in London. Let me see. Let me check. Yes, because Hodges was an Englishman. No, it doesn't matter. And I'll come to that. Once those who are non-Englishmen, I'll talk to that. That will come to later. This is Henry Salt, an Englishman, an aquatint. This is an aquatint. Riakota in the Bara Mahal. There are some other painters as well. I will mention the name. It will come serially. This also from the Fraser album, a view of the Black Pagoda on the Chitpur Road. This is by Charles Doyle. I had the pleasure of curating a show with the Victoria team on the collection of Charles Doyle's album, and then Mr. Panda was the secretary. He's sitting here somewhere. I can see him now. Okay, yes. He gave me. I think I felt honored when he invited me to do a show and write the catalog and on Charles Doyle. Charles Doyle was an opium agent in Patna, and it really gives me a lot of pleasure that today Charles Doyle is probably the highest selling catalog from Victoria Memorial, and it's running into fifth impression or something. Thank you, and he has come today. This is by Saltykov. Interior of the fort. This is a woodcut print of the fort at Agra. This is by William Daniel, the uncle and the nephew team. William Daniel. And I tell you something, when you go outside, if you read the newspapers and all, they are full of a lot of rubbish by non-experts. You will see Daniels are referred to as Daniel brothers. They were not brothers. They were uncle and nephew. Thomas and William. This by another Thomas Daniel, an aquatint, part of Cheringi, what we know today as Chorungi. This is solvents, gentleman who was asking me. Solvents came from Belgium. Balthazar Francois Solvents. And he mainly painted the people, the Mela and the Mili, the Indian environs, because there was a market to that. It was also a part of the project of Orientalism. And what was the project of Orientalism that I mentioned in Dr. Razi's? To stereotype people, to stereotype the Indians. So you'll see, when they painted even the paintings, say somebody like Ingres and other people, or say like Delacroix, the men from Asia, they look the same from Egypt to Punjab. The same wearing loincloth, or the climbing up the just with the serpent players and all this. They looked all the same. You can distinguish from a Bengali or from a Egypt or somebody from Middle East in their paintings and also in their novels. So somebody sitting in Paris in 18th century, if they had to read a Orientalist book by Nerval or somebody else, they will kind of think, oh, Indians are like this. This is a part of that Orientalist, maneuvering. So you had a stereotype, oh, Indians are like this. This is Madame Belnos offering to the Ganges. And Vasil Vereshchagin, a Russian, you will see here in the central hall, a huge oil on canvas, a priceless work. And now I start showing you the album which will be unveiled today by the Victoria Memorial Hall, which I think is another a great job that they are doing. The album starts from the north to the south, not according to the dates. The first one is by William Simpson, The Cow's Mouth, Source of the Ganges. A chromolithograph by the same person, William Simpson, in the middle of the 19th century. This is by a exquisite Thomas Daniel done in, they're saying it's late 18th century, but I think it's an early 19th century, 1810 or 1820. All on canvas. This is the scene of Hardwar. This Dasamed Ghat, what we know today as Dashadhamed Ghat at Benares, an aquatine by Thomas Daniel. Ramnagar, opposite the Benares, you know about the famous Ramnagar library and the Ramnagar principality, opposite the river Ganges, by Thomas Daniel, an aquatint. Southwest view of Fakis Rock in the river of the Ganges near Sultanganj by Thomas Daniel in Bihar. The breaking of the Ganges, it's almost like a modern painting. I mean, see, it's done in early 19th century. It's like, you see the treatment here, the way, the splash of the colors, the way he's breaking the picture plane. This is by Samuel Howitt. Durga Puja taking place on the Ganges by Thomas Daniel, all on canvas, done in 1810. So mostly Daniel was doing his work between 1810 to 1830. And Charles Dolly around the same time. Hindu Pagoda below Barakpur. You know the Barakpur, and there's an armed constabulary there of the British. This is an aquatine by Lieutenant Colonel Forrest. View of Esplanade from near Fort William. I was telling about the same scene about Tilly Kettle. This is by all on canvas by George Farrington, but this is attributed to Thomas Daniel. So this is the canvas is all about. I mean the portfolio is all about. And now if you have any question and answer, you may ask me regarding the company school or the European painters in India. Any question to ask anywhere, anything? Just free to ask.
So there may be many other paintings on Ganges, maybe not in Victoria Memorial.
And of course there are a lot done by his uncle, by William Daniel. So there are. And even I've seen few by Saltykov as well. But mostly what we are showing today, what is going to be unveiled in the album is from the treasures of Victoria Memorial, which I think is another enormous and probably the finest in the world, which is incomparable. You don't have to travel to London to see them because you know their nervousness. You know how nervous they are about their colonial loot and everything. Especially for somebody like your Robert Clive, who came at the age of 17 at a very meager salary. He went on to become one of the finest nobles, one of the richest nobles in England, which can only be compared to somebody, residing at Buckingham Palace. His Powys Castle is no less. Today, if you visit to Wales, and I must advise you to visit Powys Castle in Wales. It's a huge thing. You will be struck by the kind of stuff they have. But people, you will see on Facebook, oh, so much loot in the British Museum. Even if you look at the loot been stored in the Powys Castle. A 17, 18-year boy, he went back to England. He was mere clerk of the East India Company. How much he looted and how much wealth that he had taken back to England. And during that time, even when they reigned supremacy, when they reigned in South Asia, I mentioned it, I am reiterating once again, the army of the East India Company was even bigger than the army of Queen Victoria. And they were all funded by the house of Jagat Sheth and by the banker in Allahabad. So that's how the story is.
Yeah, Mr. Ganguly, I'd like to have a question.
Please.
First, congratulations to the Victoria Memorial Hall and to you for presenting such a marvelous and incomparable sight, you know. It's such
That's their credit.
it's a real, you know, I mean, what should I say? It's a real treat, you know, a treat, visual treat to what we saw, the little which you showed us. You know, my point is, you know, as you mentioned two things about India being the opium thing and the stereotypes. Yeah, Indians were always stereotyped in Western, you know, literature also as a snake, as a land of the snake charmers, rope trick. You know, people, they looked at us as somebody, some alien creatures, you know, something alien, somebody from outer space. Even Swami Vivekananda, when he went to Chicago, he was also looked upon by the people there as, you know, somebody from aliens, outer space, or a person who was an alien thing. Only a few Americans, they recognized him. So few learned scholars. That's why Vivekananda became the, you know, the toast of Chicago,
And
1893.
that is, gentlemen, that is the politics of modernism. I give you one example.
Right.
Even today, even if you go to Calcutta University, do you have any young student in your home or at your home who would love to study history? So if you go through this syllabus of Calcutta University, it's divided into three phases: ancient history, what you know as the Hindu history; medieval history is known as the Islamic history, and then after the death of Aurangzeb in 1707, the history, if you want to send your any of your children to Calcutta University to study history, the third phase of history is called the modern history. But you give me the logic as this. After the death of 1707, after the fall of the death of the last of the great Mughal, Aurangzeb, Alamgir, with the period of the lesser Mughals, the modern history starts. But you tell me, my dear friend, look at the politics of the modernism. If that is the case, then ancient history is Hindu history because it was ruled by the Hindu rulers. Medieval history is Islamic history because it was ruled by the Islamic rulers, which starts from 1245 with the formation of the slave sultanate, with the Delhi sultanate by Qutbuddin Aibak. Then why the third phase is not called the Christian history? Because it was ruled by the Christian. You just go and check the Calcutta University syllabus. Islamic history, ancient history, Islamic history, and modern history, which is not called the British history.
Why you are saying Calcutta University? All universities in India.
The people are changing. Okay, maybe all universities are like this, but now it's changing. Abhi ye Delhi University nahi hai. And I tell you something else. Look at the other products of the modern. Not only that, even some of the nomenclatures. There are I can see the faces on this Thursday afternoon. Some known faces. Some are students. They are taught to learn nomenclatures like Indo-Saracenic architecture. They are made to learn. They are made to study books on Hindu. Now you sit down. Now you sit. Hindu monuments, Jain monuments, and all that. You show me, Mr. Gentleman, you show me a single structure in Europe which is described by religious connotations. Do we call a vault, a Methodist vault, we call it Gothic. We do call a Catholic spire, we call it Renaissance. But here in India, when you will see them being described as Jain monuments, as Hindu monuments. Just yesterday, I was looking at I won't mention the name of the newspapers. I don't read newspapers these days though. I was reading the Indian newspaper. There I saw the heading called, The Indo-Saracenic Architecture of the Mayo College. Why you can name the place? Why it is called Indo-Saracenic architecture? You show me the ruling deity of Athens was Athena. But we don't call it an ethnic column, we call it an ionic column. The ruling deity of another Greek state was Poseidon. We don't call it a Poseidon column. We call it a Palladian column. But here in India, you will see they will describe it because the English, when they came in contact with us, they describe it with religious connotations. And we are still studying, our children are still studying them. We still call it Indo-Saracenic or Jain monuments, Buddhist monuments and all that. Why? And even our language, I was reading those language was, even the languages are described as a religion. Some people say that, Sanskrit is a Hindu language, Persian is a Muslim language. Why is this? You show me a single language in Europe which is described by a religious connotation. Do we call French a Catholic because it has a Catholic majority country? Or do we call English as an Anglican language because it is an Anglican Christian country? Or the German as a Protestant language because it is a Protestant country? We never say that, but we say it here. That is the poison of modernism.
So one of the paintings here actually showed a Hindu pagoda.
Yeah.
Hindu pagoda.
Because he needs to be audible for the video.
Which one is this? Let me check. Chitpura, yeah.
One of the monuments shown on one of the pics actually, paintings actually showed a Hindu pagoda.
Pagoda, that's how they used to describe a pagoda, because they first came in contact with the West when they were coming in. Came in contact. They were trained in, like people I told you, they were trained in Hillsbury College. All these IS officers and these British people when they came here, mostly as a clerk or an officer of the East India Trade of the John Company. So they call it, yeah, they call it.
This is not the one.
This is the temple. This is the view. Yeah, this is the one. Black pagoda. Yes.
No, there was another one, Hindu pagoda later on.
These nomenclatures are still
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Hindu pagoda. That's how they call a pagoda. That
Why a Hindu pagoda?
because it was a Hindu temple. Because it is a Hindu temple.
These
So a
titles
temple is
are
referred
given
to
by
as a pagoda.
As a pagoda, yes.
these titles
This-
are given
because-
by the painters.
By the painters themselves in the 18th century.
Because a pagoda actually has architectural connotations
Yes.
in India and abroad. So it's interesting to see that an English painter actually refers to a temple not as a temple.
What they know as their nomenclatures, what they know as their own connotation. This connotation they've always maintained. My problem is, what I do the fact that if we still, I mention the name, Parthamitra's book, you will still find this. This European nomenclature, we are still perpetuating after 70, 75 years of independence. We are still perpetuating it. We still call this a Hindu monument, a Jain monument. You will never find it in the West. We call it a Renaissance spire, a Renaissance dome, or say a Gothic this thing, or a Carolingian church by the place. And at the same time, all these painters, they are also mentioned as Pahari, Mughal, and all that. Never by the names, but you will see, not a single art historian I've seen mention the word Siena school or the Florentine school. They will mention the painters, Duccio or Cimabue or Giotto or Michelangelo. They will never do that. But it's time. It's time to decolonize the project. And a part of the decolonization project is also the unveiling of the portfolio today. We are decolonizing it and showing it to the public. What treasure that we have. That's enough, Ashwini?
We have time for one last question.
Yeah.
This is not a question actually. How many images are included in this folder?
10 priceless paintings. Some are aquatints, some are chromolithographs, some are all on canvas. All great painters.
10.
So we really cannot categorize them as simple as mere European painters in India. I think these painters are as big as Michelangelo or Da Vinci and all that, and also the unforgotten masters of the company school.
Just European painters.
European painters, yeah. Dr. Panda, আপনি কিছু বলবেন?
I have forgotten everything. And so many new things are
And
coming.
Dr. Panda, when he was the Director General of Victoria, he gave me the first chance to bring out that Charles Doyle book. That catalog of Charles Doyle and the exhibition of Charles Doyle. And I'm really lucky that it is still a huge success.
Yes.
And the present curator is sitting here, Mr. Anurag Kumar. So I'm really happy that you have come for the presentation. It's my pleasure as well, sir, to see you.
So maybe we move to the next segment,
Yes.
the unveiling of the picture folio. Before that, we will request sir to please
Yeah,
felicitate.
Yeah. Please come and talk about the portfolio as well.
Sir, we'll just felicitate the speaker first, then.
Thank you, Mr. Ganguly, for such an inspiring lecture. On the occasion of unveiling of this portfolio, which has been done on the river Ganga, Um, well, I am neither an artist nor a historian. I am basically a scientist with physics background and coincidentally here because I have been given additional charge of the post of secretary curator of Victoria Memorial. I'm happy to see Dr. Panda sitting here, who, in fact, I was told was the was the person behind the first portfolio which was brought out here on this issue. I thank you, sir, for being with us here today. Um, well, as a 16, 17-year-old kid, I was an NCC cadet, and I got an opportunity to travel in the river Ganga from Patna to Farakka for 12 days. I sailed through the river Ganga from Patna to Farakka. And I realize today why so many artists have been influenced by the river Ganga. When I recollect my memory of that travel that I took in the year I think 1981. Uh, well, um, so it's not only the flowing river which inspires everybody, not only the artists, the painters, but also the musicians, the scientists, and every walk of our culture, because our this river is not just a river, it is a culture flowing through the Himalayas uh, to the Ganga Sagar. So it's Gomukh to Ganga Sagar, which binds the entire country in one unison. And that is the spirit of Ganga which we have tried to bring out in this folio. Uh, and I thank the entire team of Victoria Memorial who has done this marvelous work for bringing out this folio. And as mentioned in the lecture, we would try to bring as many such folios as possible, because I know that on display we have only 1.46% of our collection. Rest of them are in stores, and it's very important that these collections are also brought to the knowledge of public. I would rather be happy if the artists associate with us to curate such folios, so that we can have a good publication in our collection. Thank you all for coming here today and listening to the brief lecture, and also participating with us in the unveiling of this folio. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Ganguly ji. And thank you all for joining us today. We are very happy to unveil this before you, and especially to have Panda sir also here with us on the occasion. The folio is, of course, his hard work first. And then when the copy sold out, because it was so beloved, it was decided to renew it one more time. So the essence remains, but we've changed some prints here and there and updated some information so that it matches to the context today. we have a small publication counter set up outside, and y'all can be the opportunists to buy it for the first time today. So please enjoy yourselves. Thank you so much, everybody.